Watch this. One tiny change in racket head position turns a flat, predictable loop into a spin bomb your opponent can't handle. My partner sends me a long ball. Watch this. If I make contact with the racket head level, see, the racket face stays flat as it meets the ball, I can loop it over, but there's almost no spin. Watch my partner try to block it. The ball comes back dead, no rotation at all. Now watch the difference. I let the racket head drop down before contact, and this time I brush thin against the ball. Immediately you can see the spin, my partner can barely hold it down. The key is that at the moment of contact, the racket head is always hanging below my hand. See how the ball kicks off the rubber? That's the secret to generating real spin. The racket head always drops down first. When I meet the ball, I brush upward from underneath. Watch, even at the top of the bounce, I still use that same thin, grazing contact. If the ball is short, say here over the table, I do the same thing. I bring the racket head down to about here, then whip it around and up. There's a turning motion, the racket head must rotate through. This applies to ripping the ball too, not just looping. You can't just lift the ball up. You need real spin, real quality. Whether I'm looping from here or from there, the racket head always points down first, toward my left foot. From that starting position, I just turn and accelerate through. When the ball lands short, I simply move forward and then rotate up. That's how I generate spin through the racket head. The racket head contacts the ball, and I concentrate all my force into that moment of rotation. That's where the spin comes from. And the forward power, that comes from the arm extending through the shot. As long as I have that racket head rotation, I can handle anything. My partner sends a heavy backspin, really chops it hard. Watch, even against that heavy backspin, the ball still clears the net comfortably. It may not have huge speed, but it gets on the table. By adjusting my position and timing, I raise my consistency even more. The point is, get the ball on the table first. Then you solve everything else after that. The backhand long ball is the weak spot for most amateur players. Opponents serve deep to your backhand, and all you can do is push, you can't loop it. That's because the backhand deep corner is a genuine vulnerability. I think this next point is absolutely critical. To loop backspin successfully, your racket must start below the ball. It doesn't matter yet whether you can add heavy spin or power, you must begin lower than the ball. Here's what I mean. My partner sends one over. The principle is identical for both backhand and forehand. Watch. My partner sends a heavy backspin ball. Now watch, if I try to loop from behind the ball and immediately raise my upper arm, I miss the ball entirely. Let me try again. If you lift the upper arm too early, here's why it fails. The ball contacts your racket on the lower half of the blade while the racket is still moving downward. The ball only sits on the rubber for a split second, and in that instant, it's already rolling into the net. By the time your upper arm finally comes up, the ball is long gone. All that arm raising is just for show, it does nothing for the ball. The force never reaches the ball. So when does force actually connect? Matching force means meeting the ball's incoming path. If the ball comes this way, I go back that way. A backspin ball drops down, so I get underneath and come up to meet it. That's matching force, you find the ball's direction and answer it. Now my partner sends a heavy push, and I'll show this with my forehand. Watch, I start lower than the ball. It caught my hand there. Watch again, when I start below the ball, the loop becomes effortless. My partner sends another one. At the moment I meet the ball going upward, look at the height relationship, the ball is here and my hand starts down here. I need to push forward and upward at the same time, meeting the ball on the way up. Watch one more. You must anticipate and position yourself just a little lower than the ball. Drop the racket down, get underneath it. Once you do that, the loop becomes so much easier. It really is that simple, start a little lower than the ball, and suddenly both hands feel relaxed and natural. The effort drops dramatically. Two key points. First, the racket head points toward your left foot, but don't start the whip early. It fires at the moment of contact. Second, always start below the ball. Then commit fully, accelerate forward and upward into the friction. Meet the ball with total commitment, no holding back. Whether contact happens here, here, or here, you must be accelerating through the brush, not pushing from behind the ball. Now when you're hitting flat, driving through the ball, does the wrist move or not? Think about it. The answer is, it does not move. Remember this, anytime you're committing full power into a flat hit, the wrist stays locked. The wrist cannot wobble even slightly. Not one bit. Let me show you why. If I'm hitting a flat drive against topspin and my wrist shifts even a little at contact, the ball flies off immediately, every time. So during the impact, the racket face must be rock solid. You're using raw force to overpower the incoming spin. Force cancels spin at that moment of collision. The older generation of players, they all hit flat against topspin loops. They drove through the ball, and it worked. But the margin for error was small. There's very little spin on a flat hit, almost none. So at the instant I want to commit full power into that collision, the wrist must be completely firm. Lock it in place, no wobble, no give. It has to be solid. That's the first point. The second point is this. Once you've finished the friction phase and you whip forward to accelerate and add power, that moment of acceleration also demands a locked wrist and firm fingers. At the instant of force, nothing can wobble, not even slightly. Your margin for error goes way up, and your consistency improves. But friction is always the first priority, unless the ball has absolutely no spin. Whether it's a small loop or a bigger stroke, the moment the ball carries any spin and you want to add power, the friction phase cannot run through the entire swing. If your wrist range is too large, that's exactly why I tell you not to use the wrist. You can't control where it stops. Even a tiny wobble creates errors. So lock the wrist, grip the handle firmly, and keep the racket face absolutely still. That's how you get consistency on the hit. Now for the friction phase, the principle is different. You let the racket face rotate, and it must accelerate through the turn. Then when you transition back into the power phase, you lock the grip tight again. Master that sequence and you've got the whole picture. Then let me show you why holding the finish matters so much. On the backhand loop, after you accelerate through the ball, you have to hold that final position, freeze it. Watch, I loop, and at the end I hold the racket steady. No wobble, no collapse. Many players I coach share the same problem. They loop, and at the very last instant the arm goes soft. The structure collapses. That final moment has to feel like someone is taking your photograph. You hold the pose, you hold your breath. Freeze. Don't let the energy leak out. The same principle applies on the forehand. After the stroke finishes, the last instant must be firm. Watch me loop a couple here, see how the finish locks in place. See, completely locked at the finish. Let me exaggerate it so you can hear the effort. Watch. Every loop I exhale sharply and hold. The shot comes out explosive. Now compare, if you can't hold that finish, the arm drops, the racket drifts sideways, and all the energy you built just leaks away. That's why the stroke feels weak. It's not about posing, it's about maintaining structure so the force stays in the ball. You have to brace through the finish. Hold it, hold it. That final freeze is critical. So remember 3 things. Let the racket head drop below the ball to create the friction angle, brush through with rotational contact instead of lifting, and hold your finish position to lock the spin into the shot. Practice the drop and brush slowly at first, then gradually add speed and power.